In the creative arts industry, the murder of a project is considered especially heinous. The dedicated detectives who investigate these vicious felonies are members of an elite squad known as the Pitch Bleak Unit. The cases are real. The victims are real. The part at the end where they talk about Hayden's ideas, that's just kind of improvised. This is Pitch Bleak. On today's episode, Lally Katz, the award-winning American-Australian dramatist. With over 50 plays written and produced, she's one of the most celebrated playwrights of her generation. So, adapting one of her hit shows to the big screen seemed like a done deal. But the movie was never made. Who killed Lally's feature film? Who conspired to destroy her silver screen dream? It's time to catch a killer on the True Creative Crime podcast, Pitch Bleak.
Interview with suspect begins at 12:06 p.m. That's 7:06 p.m. Los Angeles time, and we do thank the Pitch Bleak LA Bureau for facilitating this interview.
Would you please state your full name for the tape?
Constance Lally Katz.
That is your real name. It's not Lally Katz.
Well, Lally Katz, Lally's an abbreviation of my middle name, Lally, and I've always been called Lally. But if you look on my passport, you will see I'm Constance Lally Katz.
Already an alias admitted to in just the first couple of minutes.
All right, Lally Katz, author, playwright, dramatist, a list of priors that have grabbed our attention from The Dog, the Cat, A Golem Story, Goodbye Vaudeville, Charlie Marge, Stories I Want to Tell You, Wentworth, Spirited, The Rabbits. This is a concerning amount of creativity, and it's just a handful of things that we've got here.
That's just the recent stuff.
I wanted to ask, with The Rabbits, that was writing for opera, right?
So yes, it was. Yeah.
How does that differ for you, like in terms of a writing style?
The people who I was working with knew opera really well, and I remember I was working with Kate Miller-Heidke, and she just taught me just match up the syllables. That's like, and then, say what, like you can use the words you want to use, just match up the syllables, and that will make it, that means you can sing it easy. Like it'll kind of match when you're singing it.
That's it? That's all you got to do for opera?
That's it. That's it.
Again, we've been...
Well, I wasn't writing the music.
Just the libretto.
Yes, just the libretto. That's right.
We were led to believe that the opera was hard, but thank you for blowing that out of the water.
They lied.
What? Is there anything they're not lying about?
You have I guess which you described to have a love-hate relationship with writing. When you aren't doing, you said it's amazing and you love it, but when you are doing it, you ask yourself, why am I doing this? Which is it, Lally? Do you actually enjoy doing it? We see you've got a book that's been 12 years late to the publishers. Do you actually even enjoy doing any of this?
Once I'm actually in there, great. But the getting into it is like hell. Like today, I volunteered at my son's school for 2 hours. I was doing laundry and I probably wrote on my book for about 15 minutes. It was a great 15 minutes. And it was actually, and I was like, yeah, okay, we made some headway here. But I mean, it was due 12 years ago, but now it's really due in a month.
Give us a little bit of background on that. How have you managed to push a deadline out for 12 years with a publisher?
The original publisher who published it, when I first was handing it in a little bit late, she said, "Oh, Lally, don't worry. You're a month late. You should see how late some authors are." And that just, a little thing went off in my head, which was like, oh, I could just take my time on this. And whereas if she'd said, "Lally, you're letting us down. We were counting on this book," then I would have stayed up all night and done it. But so then more and more time kept going by, and it was about a specific story in my life, and that story started to become really outdated. And so I just kept writing as I went along and doing and then so the book, the truth is I have hundreds of pages, but no one wants hundreds of pages. And so then anyway, finally, my agents said to me, "Hey, what's this? It says in your bio you've got a book due, and what's going on with this?" And I said, "Oh, it's 12 years late. And they're like, well, should we try and like end this contract? And I was like, no, I want to hand it in. But then it turned out that the original publisher who commissioned it had left the book company like a month before. And so then they reached out to another publisher, and she was actually someone who I'd known from years ago, and she was like, yeah, we still want the book. And I was like, oh my God. And then she was like, and we want it now. And I was like, okay, all right, okay, it's happening. And so now it's got to happen.
We'll check back in with you in 12 years on that one.
Please, yeah. Well, if I don't do it now, then I may as well die. You know what I mean? Like, it's like I've failed at life.
For our audience, we are speaking to you via video link from LA. Some people may have detected a slight accent on your part, and typically we basically interrogate Australian artists usually. Do you actually have a claim to being Australian? What's going on here?
I'm a dual citizen.
Oh.
I was born in the U.S., and then we moved to Australia. And when I was 8 3/4 years old, and when I moved to Australia as a kid, I had to unlearn all my Americanness and learn learn how to be Australian. And you don't say good things about yourself. You don't, but then I moved back here. And I go to these meetings and they go, oh, so what have you done? I'm like, I mean, not that much. And they're like, well, why are we meeting? And so now I'm trying to learn to be an American again. And they're so different.
It sounds a lot more positive over there.
Sometimes it's inauthentic positivity, which it will come as no surprise, probably. Like, I feel like if an Australian says they did something that was good, you're like, oh, it must have been really good.
Right.
Oh, that must have. But whereas an American, it's like, even like now with my little boy, he's 4.5 years old. And I think the way I hear him talk, I think, oh, if we move back to Australia, we're going to really have to change. But like the way you're like saying, hey, look how good I am at this. And so he'll do like a handstand and it's like, it's an okay handstand. But he's like, that was the best handstand. And so,
bring him back here. We'll tell him how his handstands really are. That sucked.
So when we said we were interviewing Lally Katz, a couple of the cops back at the station said, just ask about magic realism. I was like, okay, fair enough.
I really like to mix the mundane suburban realities with the kind of with a magic or so, and because I feel like that's kind of what life is. But when I was late teens, early 20s and was writing plays, everyone was like, oh, no one's interested in that kind of fantasy. But I felt so strong about it. And now it's just like when I have it in something now, it's just like a little bit. It's like it's everything's normal, everything's normal, and then there's like a row of townhouses that kind of bucks like a centipede, or like it's more images or something. It's like, and I feel like when I can pitch it in a way that is tied to an emotional reality, people don't seem to question it. But if I kind of haven't hit it right, then that's when it can get killed pretty easily.
Yeah.
You alluded to some of your early work, Lally, and fair to say that a lot of it was pretty far out in terms of childlike worlds and fairy tales. And do you find that as you went on with your career that reputation would precede you? Here comes Lally Katz. She's going to provide some wackiness.
You know what? Actually, Chris Kennett, this, strangely enough, one of the biggest lessons I learned about writing was almost 20 years ago. Chris was working at Rove writing like jokes, and I was too for 6 weeks till I got fired because I was very bad at it. But I didn't know how it worked, and I was like, and I was reading a bunch of sketches that you did, and I was like, oh, I see what you do. I see because I was like kind of writing this crazy stuff, or I was writing stuff that like, I was like, oh, it's meant to be like this. But and I was reading some of the stuff you wrote, and I was like, oh, you have to set it up. Like, go, okay, you know this thing and I know this thing and we're on the same wavelength here. And then once the audience is on the same wavelength, then you can jump and they can go with you, and then you can twist it around and land somewhere kind of like surprising. And I was like, oh, and it was a big, and like, even though I got fired, and so thank you for that, Chris. But it was like, not for firing me, but for
I didn't
teaching
fire
me
her.
that. But
I just want to say that.
you didn't fire me. Sure. You didn't fire me. True. And so that was like a massive lesson.
That is a very generous way of saying you just drop a pop culture reference. We would reference, Norbit, which was a infamously poorly received Eddie Murphy film. And that would just be the punchline of every joke.
No, I don't think, no, it wasn't. Because I remember at that time, I was like going, oh, to actually do this, to actually be good at it, you have to live it. And I was like, I'm not living this. I'm living theater. But these guys who are really good at it, they're living it.
So you discovered that gag writing for a TV talk show host was not your bag.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, it wasn't so much that I discovered as the producers discovered. But then at that time I was writing a big play about I had this 80-year-old Hungarian neighbor, and I remember when I met her, and I was like, oh, she's an epic character that I like, and will be like, she's relatable to anyone, like to young people, to old people, to like her stories, like as a war prisoner, is all this, like but then they're like these epic stories that can speak to anyone. But then here she is in Q, like going into Kohl's and like getting bread, and like so that was like, and I think all of that sort of happened at the same time, where I was like, oh, you need to find something that speaks to you, but that can also, because if you don't care about it, no one's going to care about it. That was sort of the first time that I'd written a play that was really not just about like things from my imagination, but that were things that I was really taking like from the real world, or learning like a way a character spoke.
Are we speaking about the origins of Neighbourhood Watch here?
Yes.
Good.
Is this the crime that we're discussing
This is
today?
the crime that we have actually brought you in to speak about today. Your play, Neighbourhood Watch, a very successful enterprise, has not, as of yet, reached the screen, despite many efforts. Please tell us about the history of this ill-fated project.
Look, there's a lot of blood. There's a lot of blood. And there's a lot of guilty hands, and 2 of those hands are my own.
Now, Lally, before you incriminate yourself in this, we'll decide who the real perpetrator
All
is.
right, fair. Okay.
All right.
Some people might be mad at me at the end of this, but it's worth it. Because you know what? The guilty party has to go down. It was about an elderly Hungarian woman who was kind of like, didn't trust the world, and had all these, terrible experiences in the war, and now was like living out the war still in Australia. And then she meets this kind of like lost younger woman who was like, AKA me, who was sort of feeling lost and and kind of unrooted in the modern world, and having like these other problems. And then they become these it's like a buddy thing. They become these unlikely friends. And then she would tell the me character all her stories, and then the me character it would like be these sort of flashbacks where the me character would be her, and like speaking in her idiom and stuff. It's sort of a friendship story, and like a generational story, and so it was super successful. Like it had a big season in Sydney, and then in Melbourne, and then also with Robin Nevin played Anna in Sydney and Melbourne, and then Miriam Margolyes played her in Adelaide. At that time, there were a bunch of plays that were on at Belvoir in Sydney that were like, straight away, producers were like, let's make this into a movie. There was, I remember Tommy Murphy's Holding the Man got made into a movie. Brendan Cowell made his Reuben Guthrie into a movie. My friend Rita Callianese made her play into a movie. Like, it was like a whole, like, and Simon Stone's The Wild Duck got made into The Daughter. There was like, it was like a flurry of plays being made into movies. And I wanted in. I really wanted that for Neighborhood Watch. And so all the time I was like asking my agent at the time, like, does anyone want to do it? And she's like, oh, so far, no one. And then a friend of mine who I'd gone to university with and was always super close with, Nick Verso, said, I want to do it with you. And I was like, okay, great. At the same time, we were working on another idea for a television show together. And Nick is amazing and so smart and really good at thinking fast and saying like his idea, and he's very loyal to his ideas, and like he's very loyal to the like origin of an idea, whereas I can be pretty fickle. And like, I get a note and I'm like, I'll go and I'm not proud of that. And sometimes it's okay. And sometimes I can destroy things. And so we were working on this TV show together. And also I hadn't actually watched that much TV. And so he had all these television references. And I felt a little bit bamboozled by his knowledge, and also his like, he knew what he thought about things. Whereas I was kind of swaying in the wind. And I thought, this isn't going to work with Neighborhood Watch because he's going to have these things that he knows in his heart. And I'm not going to be able to communicate what I know or think. And so instead of telling him this or having a conversation about it, instead I said to my agent, I don't think we can do Neighborhood Watch together. And she was also his agent, but then she didn't know how to say anything. So neither of us said anything to him for, I don't know, quite a while. And
Okay.
and it was all, and so I would see him and I'd be like, has she said anything to him?
So as far as you're concerned, like he's out on that, but you don't know if he knows.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And so we were still working on the TV thing
Yeah.
together, and the Neighborhood Watch thing was in the background. So then my agent got a call from Gillian Armstrong, who's like a really well-known, I'm sure you've heard, like
Yeah.
a film director, and she wanted to do Neighborhood Watch. And I was like, okay, well, Nick still didn't know.
Mm.
And so then the next time we meet, I'm like, I have to say it. So I said to him, oh, Nick, by the way, I'm not going to do Neighborhood Watch with you anymore. I'm going to do it with Gillian Armstrong. And he was like, okay. And then he was like, well, this is really hurtful, and I probably would have rather have heard it from our agent. And I don't understand why you're like suddenly cutting me out and not doing it like all of us together. And I was, and I handled it, the whole thing, so badly. And I will say this, Nick is very successful now. It did not hurt him. He has gone on to make movies,
Yep.
television series. And also we were very old friends.
Yeah.
And it kind of killed our friendship. So it was really
Oh,
sad.
boy.
And although I did see him one time in LA, like about 5 years ago, and I went up and I said, Nick, and he kind of looked at me like he was like surprised, but like also like still like a little bit like hurt in his eyes. I said, Nick, I'm so sorry. And I was like, I was such an asshole and I handled it all so badly. And he was like, hey, we all make mistakes. And then we had like a fun night together and stuff. And so, but I do feel like that was one of the big mistakes that I've made.
How, you say there, Lally, that you feel you handled that so badly. What specifically, what should you have done?
I guess I didn't communicate with him really. Like, I guess what I probably should have done is said, hey, Nick, I feel a bit in over my head on the way that we're working. Like, I feel like my thoughts don't work as fast as yours, and I kind of can't keep up on stuff. And like, I probably should have communicated about it rather than gotten weird and just like backed out without kind of having conversation about any of it.
Instead of saying Verso out, Armstrong in. I mean, it's quick,
Yeah.
it's efficient, but
It's quick.
possibly insensitive.
Possibly insensitive. So then I start working with Gillian, who is, and her producer, Marion McGowan. She's very, obviously a very confident, like filmmaker and stuff, but she also, like me, can change her mind about stuff a lot.
Yeah.
So like she and I would like go down one path and then we'd be like, we did the wrong thing. So we went, so then we could be like, okay, we got to go back. We got to go back. And so we kept like going down all these different paths. And finally, this was years and years, we got to the end of the process where we're both like, we are happy with this script. And she said, you know what? Here's the thing. I think I'm too old to direct it now.
Oh.
And I was like, oh, and she said, but I'll be a producer on it and we'll find another director.
She was too old as in like the hands-onness or something, or like the amount of work that she needed to be a director?
Well, she said, I feel like this is something for a younger director to do now. And like, and I feel like, and she said, I'm probably going to do just like one more project or something. And we're still friends. Like I love her.
What did she think was going to happen?
No, I guess maybe, to be fair to her, we'd been working on it for 10 years by then.
Okay.
So it was like a really long time. So she and Marion found this other director, Rosemary Myers, who I love, and I've worked with her a lot in theater. But then by the time we found her, Marion was too busy doing the television show The Great with Tony McNamara to produce it anymore. So she said, look, I can still stay on as like an executive producer, but we've got to find another producer and to actually do it. So that was sent out to a whole bunch of people, but it just didn't click with anyone. And so and like she was still kind of looking, and then I was like, well, we signed up to do this, like the three of us, and now it's kind of not that anymore. So maybe I should just try and take it somewhere where there's like life somewhere else. And they were like, go with our blessing, whatever we can do to help. And so then I started pitching it as a TV show.
Uh-huh.
And I ended up doing, signing up with Goalpost, who are, they're a great company. I started working with their new development person, Polly Rowe. And Polly Rowe is an old friend of mine. She was at Sydney Theatre Company for years. But what they didn't realize, and maybe Polly didn't remember, is that I originally pitched Neighbourhood Watch as a play to Polly at Sydney Theatre Company, and she rejected it. And so then, so then Polly and I were working on this pitch for 2 years, and but it just kept not getting pitched. And then I think they said, well, maybe Lally's too close to it and we should get another writer. And
what?
I was like, you know what? I think that's what happened. And so then we
this is the ship of Theseus. You've replaced everything.
Everything.
It needs a new title, different main character. It's an Adam Sandler comedy now.
I'd love Sandler to be involved. But so then we decided we amicably parted ways, and now I don't know. Is it just not meant to happen? Like, is it just it had its day and now it's been developed for 13 years, and it's like, or is that just what happens with stuff? Is it dead? I don't know.
Are we declaring it dead? Is it still around? Like, is it floating around somewhere?
It has one ray of hope. So I worked with my friend Josh Thomas, who comedian. He saw the play years ago, and he always was like, "Oh, I think this would be a good." Like, I guess he was thinking he doesn't really do movies, but so I might give it one last shot with him if he wants to.
Okay.
And the producer that he works with, but. I mean, look, the original play was on in 2011, and I started writing it when I was 27, and I'm 45 now, almost 46. So it's like, oh my God, that's almost 20 years. I mean, wow. Anyway, so it's like, do I keep being like faithful to that past self that did that, or do I go, okay, I've got a picture of Anna. Right. I don't know if you can see her as a young woman. Yeah. I mean, she's still, and she died now, but she died about like 8-9 years ago. But
she could not wait.
And she also died in the play.
Yeah.
She couldn't.
Yeah, she couldn't direct
Yeah,
it.
she couldn't wait.
She really was getting too old for it.
I mean, look, she was sometimes going to sue me anyway. So
Okay.
but I mean,
Well, that's taken care of.
But I think she would have been thrilled about the movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that's the corpse.
The world has passed it by. Unless
Yes.
Josh Thomas
The
gets on board.
saviour.
He's our only chance here.
What would you do differently?
The things I would change are be less of a jerk, be better at writing it, and like maybe the thing that I found hard to work with Nick was because I was so changey in the wind. Maybe it would have been good to just be like, no, just you're like, yeah, you're right. We just do this thing and we just stick with it, and you do that because sometimes when you change stuff, you think you're making everyone happy, but ultimately it can just kind of. It just makes the whole process kind of waver or something. It's hard. It's really hard to know. You never know, I think, until later if you've kind of destroyed something or not.
Changing from a play to into a screenplay, what is the hardest part of that?
That's a good question. And you know what? Maybe that was the problem, actually. It seems like it should be an easy thing to do, but actually a play is all dialogue. And I think in dialogue mostly. So it's like, so that was my problem in writing a film. I was like, it was dialogue. And and my telling a story in images was a bit false. Maybe what I would have done is just start over again and not use the play or just done a whole different film. And so, which is not too late to do, actually.
Well,
but it is.
For many people,
I mean,
it is.
I guess I can see why. Maybe, yeah.
Before we do try to wrap up this investigation, Lally, and try to identify a suspect, I've got to ask you about one other thing that you mentioned in your brief, and that is that you pitched for a Sandra Bullock Christmas movie. Is that right?
Okay, so when I moved to LA, I was like, anytime I had a meeting, I was like, whoa, I made it.
Yeah.
Like I'd leave going, oh, and I had this one meeting where early on, where it was like this big time producer, and he was like, he'd read a play of mine. He's like, we've got this project that I think you could be great for. We're doing this Christmas movie. Sandy Bullock is she's not officially attached, but like she's very interested. Yeah. And it's about like this she's got this relationship with there's this elf, this sort of wayward elf. And it was like, I'd love to see your take on that. And I was like, I am not going to let this pass me by. And so I was like, day and night working on this Sandra Bullock Christmas movie, writing, the 10-page pitch, sending it to them. Then they give me notes, blah, blah. And then it was about a month. And then finally I said to my manager, I was like, so do I just have to keep doing rewrites on this pitch indefinitely? And and they were like, well, give it a little more time. And then after another couple of weeks, they were like, they finally said, okay, if you want Lally to keep doing this, you have to you've got to hire. And they're like, oh no.
What?
And then it's called a bake-off, and I didn't know. Every new writer in Hollywood it's like a tar pit. Basically, you're pitching against other writers without realizing you're pitching against other writers. And most of the time, no one gets picked, and it's not even necessarily a real idea. At the time, I didn't know, and I was always like, oh, they want me. But they didn't. They didn't.
Hang on, so are you saying there may never really have been a Sandra Bullock Christmas movie? It was a mirage?
Have you seen one?
I haven't seen
I
one.
think, well, and I met another writer, and she pitched on the same one. I met her a few years ago, maybe 5 years ago, and she was like, yeah, I pitched on that Sandra Bullock Christmas movie.
Oh.
Never came to anything.
I feel like it should
look,
exist.
maybe it still will, which would change my perception about everything. Then I'd be like, okay, it was real. It was real.
So in this bake-off, is anyone actually reading the scripts, or are you just handing them and they throw them away and then...
Someone in development is reading them. The boss is not reading them.
Okay.
The boss is never reading them. Somebody lower down is reading them and giving you notes.
Okay.
Based on what they think their boss will like. Almost never is it what their boss will like. But it's this crazy system of of getting notes of someone trying to guess what someone else will want.
And you're trying to guess what they want. So you're trying to guess what that person is guessing about what somebody else wants.
Everyone's trying to guess. Yeah. Yeah. Except for like a few people who are just like, no, I'm just doing what I like. And then probably that
They
gets
get
made.
hired.
But that's what I learned after a while. I was like, you actually do just have to only do something if you like it, and then try and stay with it, because if you are trying to twitch yourself into a shape to do something to like have a career, it so rarely works anyway. But it depends how good you are at it. Like some people are really good at jumping into someone else's story or being a writer in a writer's room, or like it depends where your skills are, I guess.
Would you say that your skill set includes appearing on Q&A?
I would say it did not include that. I would say that was, in fact, definitely that was like a very low point of my skill set. And I remember I was going out with John Safran at the time, who'd done it before, and he knows stuff. I don't know anything. And so I said to them when they were like, this is years ago now, but then they were like, do you want to do it? I was like, I really don't know anything about politics. And they were like, don't worry. We'll throw you some easy, like it'll be,
What?
you just sort of be yourself anyway. And I was like, oh, and I remember even when I was on it, my attention span isn't great. And so they were talking and I started just looking at myself in the monitor and I was thinking, my posture doesn't look good. What, maybe if I sort of, and then I was like, and then they'd be like, Lally, your thoughts on capital gain tax? And I'd be like, but yeah, it was definitely, and then I remember afterwards, like, John was like, I told you not to do it.
All right, Lally, we have, we are, for the purposes of this investigation, we are declaring Neighbourhood Watch deceased.
I understand.
It's part of the conceit of the show. If it's still alive, this show doesn't make any sense. Chris has been writing down names. If you're okay with it, we are going to identify some of the witnesses and or suspects that will help us identify the killer.
All very credible suspects here. Lally Katz, beginning with Kate Miller-Heidke.
Possible.
Came up early in this investigation. Big name, kind of quiet, could be suspicious. We might need to look further into that one. I've got Rove McManus here. Hired you, fired you. Maybe he didn't do it personally, but I'm going to hold him responsible. You say you learned a valuable lesson about writing when you were there. Clearly not valuable enough because it wasn't good enough to get your Neighbourhood Watch project made into a movie.
No one's talked about firing in such a wonderful light that you have. I just wanted to, acknowledge that.
Yeah, for sure. And also, how thrilling to have been fired by Rove.
I will say that I do remember that short time that you were there, Lally, and you really did the whole time have an air of, what am I doing here? You had that Q&A sort of vibe going on.
It was the Q&A vibe where I was like trying really hard, really knowing it wasn't going to work and pretty scared.
Now, we get to a major suspect, Nick Verso. You've been quite open about how you burned him pretty badly, ditched from the project in favour of Gillian Armstrong. Could Nick Verso have then plotted revenge against you and the project?
Karmically, it could be that.
Possibly not, because as we've established, good guy. Now, speaking of Gillian Armstrong, she's got to be on the list here too, because while she worked with you on the project for a long time, she did get too old. And that's on her. She allowed that to happen. She aged deliberately and callously to a point where she was unable to fulfill her role as director of the project. So she's possibly on the hook there. I mean, there are so many names here. We get to Polly Rowe at Goalpost that, as you pointed out, had previously rejected this earlier pitch of yours for Neighbourhood Watch. So it's come
That is true.
back to her again. It wouldn't be surprising if she's then going to stick the knife in to this reincarnated version of something she already tried to kill. I would. And then we've got Sandra Bullock's Bake Off.
They are all the names, Lally. Do any of them stand out, or are you like, if you had to point your fingers, or would you twist your fingers back towards yourself at this point?
Anytime I watch like a murder mystery movie, I always think I know who it is, and it's always not the person who I thought. I was the most likely suspect in my mind in the beginning. So, I mean, it's not much of a twist then if it's me, but maybe it's a twist if it seemed like it was me, then it seemed like it was actually one of them, but then it turned out it was me all along.
Oh, okay.
Would that be a satisfying plot for one of your stories?
I'd rather it was someone else who was guilty, but I feel like
All right. Well, we'll choose.
just feel like I've got the blood on my hands.
No, we'll choose. We'll choose.
We
Don't
can
worry
blame
about
Josh Thomas if
Josh
you like,
Thomas is-
but then he's probably not going to help
You
you,
know what?
out.
Blame Josh Thomas.
All
it.
right.
Okay, done.
Yeah, he can take it.
Yeah, you can tell. There we done, Josh.
I'm gonna blame this on Josh Thomas.
Well, based on that reporting and what we've done there, and Josh Thomas now being laid to play, you're free to go, Lally.
Thank you.
I hope this has released some sort of, I don't know, inner demon about Neighbourhood Watch.
It has actually. It's been very cathartic.
Before you do go, Ms. Katz, do you have any upcoming projects you'd like to plug?
My book.
Which one?
The one you haven't
My
written,
book.
you haven't
12.
finished. All right, so you're really putting yourself on the hook now. Lally Katz's book will be out really soon. Like by the time you hear this,
I mean, we've talked about the cover and stuff. I just have to finish it.
Oh,
but
yeah.
that's all.
What's inside the cover is not done.
Yes, yeah. The cover is.
It's a really good cover.
it's going to have a fill in your own chapter at the end.
Actually, that's not a bad idea.
All right. Well, thank you very much for coming on in, Lally.
Thank you, detectives.
Feeling good, Bevis? I've been looking to put that one away for a long time.
How long have you been on that case for?
Case closed, 30 years.
Shit.
Yep.
And you're only 32.
Yeah.
Before we leave, I have another cracking idea if you want to get your paws on it before it goes out into the world.
All right. What is it?
All right, you ready for Has It Got Legs?
Has got legs. Don't know if that's going to catch on, but let's give it a go.
What did you want to be when you grow up? When you grow up? What did you, when you were 7?
I dreamed of being a fictional detective on a podcast.
It doesn't help me.
Oh.
Yeah.
Honestly, it was a scientist.
Oh,
And it wasn't very specific.
okay.
It was just scientist. I just wanted to science.
And
I don't
just-
think I even was really that interested in science, but there was something, it seemed,
you like the
smart.
identity.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, he's a smart guy. I'm smart. People
Yeah,
will see
I'm gonna
me
do
as
some
smart.
sciencing. Yeah.
Here he is.
There were probably test tubes involved, microscopes, telescopes, periscopes, endoscopes.
Anyway, enough of that.
Preamble done.
I got a film idea.
Okay.
Okay, cool. By the way, you didn't ask me.
What? Oh, I don't care.
All right. So,
I don't want to know anything about your personal life, Bevis. I already know about the subway thing and it's causing problems. You should see the shit ton of paperwork this has caused upstairs. You're moonlighting.
Subway.
The chief is up my ass about this.
I'm a sandwich artist.
Yeah.
I'm good at making
He doesn't
myself-
like it.
Well, wait till I make him one. Then he'll come in. When I worked at Subway, they said I was too slow to work in the lunch line. And
What, did they have another line going?
I had to come after lunch. I was
All right, the
taking-
customers are gone. You can come out.
So, yeah, but on the lunch line, when we were all stacked up, I was putting the tomatoes on just like one at a time. Like, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Which
so you were taking
some-
that artist thing
Yeah, I
seriously.
really was.
Yeah, Hayden, it's just for the dads. Just make the fucking roll.
The idea for this film is it's a dress-up party, whole bunch of, I don't know, middle-aged people.
Yep.
And the dress-up party for this 40th, 50th, 32nd is about dress as what you wanted to be when you were a kid, like what you wanted to be when you grew up as a kid. Cool.
Cute.
Go to this party, apocalypse happens.
Right.
And now, because of the apocalypse, people, and there's people dressed as doctors and stuff, they start assuming that these people are the roles that they wanted to be. And some people start like pretending to be that they are those people, and they start to be what they wanted to be when they were a kid, but they get that experience as part of the apocalypse.
Yeah, right. So it's an awful form of wish fulfillment.
Yeah.
But it could come with problems.
I wanted to be a surgeon and I couldn't because I'm not very good at that.
But now
I'm a surgeon.
But now, snip, snip.
Snip, I'm cutting up whatever I want.
They all just go with this, do they? There's some sort of group consensus that we're all going to just...
They start disagreeing, but then it's just like...
What kind of apocalypse is this? What's happened?
Hadn't decided that. You can choose. That's, if you get on board, you choose the apocalypse. Choose
volcano.
A volcano. Okay, cool. So just one?
Probably going to need a few, aren't we?
Anyway, whatever it is, it's an apocalypse. Right. And then there'll be like one funny one who's like, I wanted to be a wrestler. And then and then eventually that wrestler will have to use their skills at wrestling.
To wrestle the apocalypse. He wrestles the volcano. It's our only chance. It's so crazy. It just might work.
But you would be a scientist and you'd be forced into like...
I know. I'd be the one trying to explain what's going on and what our options, might be. I'm just making stuff up.
Yeah, but then there's no one else and then you have to...
Well, I have to.
Yeah.
That's in...
It's you or the wrestler.
Yeah. In the absence of facts,
yes,
absence becomes fact. Think about it. Is this a short film? Or?
No, because I figured the party would take up like, it's a good 15 minutes of, and they'd be like, you turn up and like someone that became a scientist that you hated was there, but then they die.
Oh man, I'm liking this. I'm liking this as my personal revenge. I hate that guy, and you just made him up. Isn't that amazing?
It's very easy to get you to hate people, just so you know.
Yeah. And clever of you to design someone else for me to hate so that I'm more likely to hate that than your idea. Top marks, Bevis. Well done. That's another winner.